Hi, and welcome to Common Sense. I'm Ed.
And I'm John.
Hey, John.
How you doing, Ed?
Good, yourself?
I'm doing very well.
Well, give us a history lesson.
Well, we usually do. So let's go back to Thomas Paine's Common Sense. And when we think about that period of time, and we think about the American Revolution, the Revolutionary War, we all kind of think of it as a huge success, and it led to the United States. So everybody happy. But truth is that it really was extremely bloody. It took quite a few years to wind up and really pretty much tore us apart individually and collectively. So when the surrender finally came in Yorktown in 1781, we were really just kind of getting started. We really didn't have a country, and we really didn't know what to do next. In fact, it took us another 8 years to finally ratify the Constitution. And even after that, there was a lot of work that needed to be done to put the United States together. So that begs the question, why did it take so long? And the answer is there were a lot of different stakeholders, a lot of states and statesmen and individuals, and they all had different agendas. And ultimately, it was up to the Continental Congress to put all of that together in what we call closing the loop. And so we're going to talk about that today, but how would you compare that kind of challenge to the challenges that businesses face today?
Well, it's always easy in a situation where there's friction and disruption. It's easy to identify problems. I mean, we all know everything that's wrong, but figuring out the prescription for solution is tough, and it's no different today. We've talked at length about the marketing and sales silos. They each have their own leadership, their own budgets. They're competing for resources. They're managing headcount. They've got organizational stature they don't want to sacrifice. There's often little accountability. There's a lot of finger pointing, but maybe some companies talk about SLAs or service level agreements, but generally there's relatively little accountability. We know there's problems because we see sales cycles extended. We see sales pipelines bulging at the quote stage. There's a lot of no decisions. All these other kinds of symptoms clearly indicate that there's a problem. So the dilemma that faces the executive team is, okay, we've got this problem. Everyone agrees there's a problem. Everyone complains about each other, but how do we really fix it? I mean, you don't want to blow it up and go for 8 or 10 years like the Continental Congress trying to find a solution. You got to have a profitable company. So when we talk about closing the loop, Vector is saying, what do we really mean by that, John?
Well, let's start by looking at sort of the ideal scenario. Let's look at that continuum that we've been talking about for the buyer experience through the customer experience. So starting from really the first touch, buyers are looking for solutions. They're coming to the website or other online venues we have. And if we're doing things right, we're making it easy for them to get answers and to find the solutions they're looking for. And we're making it easy for them to engage with us. So we're not just kind of throwing up firewalls and paywalls and making it tough to get what they want. Then the next step would be that we're getting them into our pipeline. We're nurturing them with the right tools, the right content, and the right people whenever an engagement is made to make sure that that is the most helpful engagement possible. And we're making it easy to connect buyers with the right sales rep or customer service rep and get the right information at just the right time. Then the next step, assuming that goes well, they turn into customers and we start to, treat them in a slightly different way. Now they're actually using our products. So the key thing there is the sort of seamless handoff to customer service. And our customer service people are also very tuned in to the customer's needs and their journey, and they're providing just the right amount of support that's helpful in helping our buyers, our customers now, find their way to success. And then ultimately what happens is that based on that success, that progress that's being made on the customer end, they start to recognize that they have new needs and they have additional needs. They have new goals, for example, or they have new divisions coming on stream. And so they may need more of our products as well as our support. So it's really a loop now back to sales. And if you're doing this right, it's a continuous process. It's consistently growing sales over time, and customer satisfaction is staying at a high level. So that's kind of the ideal scenario, where you're looping from the original sale all the way around and back again, over and over again. But in your experience, where does this machine break down the most commonly?
I think it breaks down because it comes back to silos. And, to unpack the silos again, we've talked about it in depth, but we're using this analogy of this term, a loop, and it's a convenient way to visualize the process. But it's a little bit, it changes the conversation a little bit, because buyers and customers aren't on a loop. It's not some sort of a simple linear experience they have. This is really erratic, complex, convoluted, unpredictable buying journey. And so loop kind of oversimplifies it, but clearly silos are the problem. Marketing and sales aren't on the same page. Marketing spends time and money creating leads that sales says aren't the right leads for it, and those leads end up getting ignored. Sales and customer service aren't on the same page. Sales reps don't know how to answer the questions that customer service people answer, and customer service doesn't know how to do the upsell, cross-sell that sales, would traditionally be working on. And marketing and customer service aren't on the same page either. So there's not up-to-date product information and support information. The websites tend to focus on selling new products and not on helping take care of existing customers. So it's, as we talked about customer service, a lot of times customers end up essentially being ignored, taken for granted, even though so much research shows that that's the least expensive way to grow a business, is to retain customers rather than have to go find new ones. And amongst all that, there's these opportunities that fall through the cracks because the whole team doesn't use a common language. They're not using a common playbook. They're not using centralized CRM and marketing automation. They're not triggering workflows that let the different departments know at the right time based on interactions with another department what's going on. So we'll call it a loop, but it's really a leaky loop. And if the problem is silos, then I guess the question for you is, what's the solution?
Right. Well, the problem is that the first problem is that the silos don't agree on what to focus on. So they don't have a common goal. In fact, usually they're trying to just make themselves look good. They're trying to have a more profitable business unit, so to speak. And, they literally work independently of each other. So you need a common goal, and that goal should be the customer. So this really starts with agreeing that the customer is the goal, and everyone has that agreement, and everyone has a new mindset, which is around focusing on solving the needs of the customer. And a lot of companies say they do that. They say they're customer focused, and maybe independently the different business units are focusing on their individual needs for customers, but that's not the same thing. They're not getting together to make sure the customer experience is unified and seamless and a satisfying one for them. So it's not just a matter of putting lipstick on a pig. You really have to do something about it, and that takes a management mindset. It takes a real commitment to change, as we've talked about. You have to develop a plan, and you have to commit time and resources to accomplish the mission of the plan. So, part of that is usually the best approach is developing an SLA, a service level agreement among the different stakeholders, the different departments or teams or individuals. And then out of that comes a unified process where everyone agrees to all the different steps along the buyer customer journey, and making sure that those, you talked about all the different ways that buyers and customers can interact with us. And a lot of that is unpredictable. So you need to try to anticipate as much of that variability as possible in the unified process. And how are you going to deal with each one of those different scenarios? And then what we do is make sure that the plan includes real transparency among goals, metrics, and means of measurement, ways of sharing data, sharing results, and then ultimately reporting to management. So all of that needs to be very tightly controlled. Technology has a place there, but really it starts with the process and the agreement and the service level agreement. Now, that sounds like a lot, and certainly, 1 or 2 months, you're not going to get this done very effectively. But over time, if you implement this in stages, you can start to see the effectiveness of it and the impact on sustained growth and on customer satisfaction at the same time, as long as you're measuring those things. But you do need management to be committed. They need to be monitoring and assessing progress as you go. And you can implement this thing over phases to, make sure it just doesn't bring your business to its knees. And that all goes to return on investment. So how can we get to that? How can we measure return on investment? And how do we know when this loop has been closed and optimized for future growth?
So ROI ultimately is sales, obviously. I mean, that's the bottom line metric. But if you got a leaky machine, you pressure test it, and you do that to figure out where the leaks are. And so what you're talking about with metrics is the same kind of a thing that we can do to pressure test this and figure out where the leaks are. And we've talked about silos. We know that silos are a substantial part of the problem. So that means that management needs to look for metrics that are going to indicate problems at those transitions between silos, or the barriers between silos. So what kinds of metrics could you look at that would give you a sense there? Maybe the numbers of sales accepted leads per month. So the leads that marketing and sales both agree are acceptable. So not the number that marketing says that they're coming up with, not the number that sales says is decent, but a number that bridges that silo between marketing and sales. Maybe the number of engagements by those same sales accepted leads per month, and the close rates for each member of the sales team. So are those sales accepted leads actually revisiting the site? Are they engaging with content? Are they being nurtured properly? Not just have we identified them as a group, but are we actually moving that process forward? You look at the sales cycle, time to close, and reduce that over time. Track that as a metric and make sure that it's moving in the right direction. Certainly revenues, cost to acquire a customer, customer lifetime value, and even the ratio of lifetime value to the customer acquisition cost. And that's something that, the software industry looks at just routinely, because it's a set of metrics that's used in discourse with investors, and it's perhaps less familiar to companies in the industrial world. They think about a cost per lead, but they don't tend to think about the lifetime value and the customer acquisition cost, much less that ratio that can be really illustrative. Measuring customer satisfaction. Number of inquiries of different types, response time. You can even use post-engagement surveys. You got to be careful with surveys, because they can feel, they can breed cynicism if there isn't active engagement, and if there isn't follow-up, and if there isn't change. But there's certainly a tool to keep in mind. The engagement with prospects, and how does that compare to engagement with customers? If the marketing automation and the marketing effort and the sales team are really just focused on prospects, and you see a lot of engagements with a prospect and there's very little for customers, that identifies, again, kind of between those silos, a different focus, a great metric to give you some insight into that. Customer retention, repeat orders, depends on the business type, obviously, whether it's a subscription or capital equipment or whatever. Upsell, cross-sell. New business that is attributed to existing customers or new customers lets you have a good sense of where the focus is on bringing in new business. And, from the previous session, we talked a lot about channel partners. And there's an opportunity to apply many of these same kinds of metrics then to the channel as well as to the direct sales, and see whether there's breakdown or opportunity there. So all of this data, all of these metrics get pulled together, trying to identify barriers between the silos, allows companies and management to plan not just for growth, but also to update the process and make sure that the people and resources are properly aligned and focused in the right way. And, so going back to where we began this discussion, not blowing it up, not all complaining about it, and not just, waiting for years to try to get it on track, but continuously improving it, moving it in the right direction.
Wow, that sounds terrific. I think we've covered now a lot about the foundation that we need to build. And next time, let's dive in a little bit deeper on the technology that can really help us get there and achieve some of these goals we've been laying out. So until then, thanks for joining us for some common sense. I'm John.
And I'm Ed. Thanks very much.